What does perimeter mean? Perimeter is just the length around the outside of an object. When I'm trying to find perimeter, what I like to usually do is I usually like to highlight the outside of the object. So I like to take a highlighter, go something like that. That's the perimeter of the shape. So this triangle here for this first problem, all you need to do to find the perimeter is add up those three sides, right? P is the symbol we usually use for perimeter. So the perimeter is just 18 plus 25 plus 12. And if I do that on my calculator, I get 18 plus 25 plus 12 is 55. And then the unit for that is centimeters, right? Because we just added up three lengths. So the total length is 55 centimeters. There's the answer. Not too bad, right? Now I want you to try finding the perimeter of the second shape. Pause the video here, try it yourself, unpause when you're done. So the answer you should have gotten was 27 centimeters. I always like to do a last check after I finish a perimeter question. Did I add up the same number of things as number of sides? And this one we can see, yep, there's 4 sides and I added 4 things, so it makes sense that the answer is 27. So just in summary, perimeter is the distance around an object. To find the perimeter, all you need to do is add up the sides. That's it, simple as that. So there are 6 questions here. I want you to try all 6 of these questions. The answers you'll notice are at the bottom of the page, upside down. So when you finish a question, make sure to check the answer at the bottom. Now there's a few little tricks in here, so give it your best shot. When you're done, you can unpause the video, and I'm going to go through each solution quickly. So pause it here, try them yourself. So the first 3, A, B, and C, are pretty straightforward. You just need to add up the 3 sides. 3 sides in the first one, 4 sides in the second one, 3 sides in the third one. Just make sure to put your units in with your answer, right? The first one centimeters, the second one inches, the third one is feet. Now, D, maybe you tried D and didn't get the right answer at the bottom, or maybe you did, but it's a little bit more tricky. First of all, what is the perimeter of a shape? Remember, it's the length around the outside of the object, and I always like to highlight the perimeter. So this is the perimeter, right? So you'll notice a few things here. First of all, we're only given 2 of those side lengths. Also, is this 3.8 part of the perimeter? It's not, right? So we shouldn't include it when we're adding it up. Now, we can assume that this is a parallelogram. And what do you know about parallelograms? Well, we should know that the opposite sides are going to be equal to each other. It's sort of like a rectangle that's been shifted over a little bit. So we can assume down here that this is 6 meters as well, and that this is 3.9 meters. So now you see that the perimeter is just the sum of these 4 outsides, okay? Usually in the question, to show that it's a parallelogram, what I will do is I'll put the little marks like this. Those little marks mean those 2 sides are the same length. And I can do the same thing for this side and this side, but I'll put 2 little marks to show that those 2 sides are a different length, but they're equal to each other as well. Okay? So that's, if you add up those 4 outsides, you should get the correct perimeter. Same thing with this shape, E. It's a little bit tricky because I give you a little bit of extra information. The perimeter of the shape are these 4 lengths. The 5 centimeters is inside the shape. It's not part of the perimeter. So we do not include it when we're adding up the perimeter. Okay? And lastly, we have this shape. What shape is this? Well, it's a square. And we know it's a square because these little marks, call them hash marks, around the sides of the shape are on each side. So that means all those sides are the same length. So this is 6.5, oops, let me get to my pen. This is 6.5 centimeters, this is 6.5 centimeters, this is 6.5 centimeters. So all of the outside lengths are the same, so you can add up those 4 lengths, which make up the perimeter. Okay? There we go. That's how to find the perimeter of sort of regular shapes with straight edges. Now the next question is, how do we find the perimeter of a circle? The first thing to realize is we don't usually call it the perimeter of a circle. We call the perimeter of a circle something very special. We call it the circumference of a circle. So in this blank here, where it says the total distance around a circle is the answer, that's what the circumference is. It's the perimeter of a circle. Now, you have a very fancy formula sheet, or you should have a very fancy formula sheet, which has a bunch of information on it. And the first thing you'll notice is that on this formula sheet is that it's got a bunch of formulas for perimeter, right? Bunch of formulas for perimeter for each of these shapes. Now, what you'll notice is we didn't actually use any of these formulas when we found the perimeter of these shapes. And that's because perimeter is as simple as adding up the outside of the shapes. So we don't really need these formulas. These formulas actually can make it more complicated to find the perimeter. We don't need to use those. You'll see the formulas are just literally adding up the sides, right? But the one that is important, that's a little bit different, a little bit more difficult, are the formulas for the circumference of a circle, or the perimeter of a circle. We have two formulas here for the perimeter of a circle. C equals this funny symbol times D, or C equals 2 times that funny symbol times R. And maybe you've seen that funny symbol before. I'm going to go back over here. That symbol is called pi. And it's not pi like P-I-E. That symbol is P-I. It's spelled P-I. And it's a Greek letter. And what it stands for is it stands for a very specific number. And that number is 3.1415926535, blah, blah, blah. It goes on forever. It's a whole bunch of decimals. And so, to make it easier for ourselves, we just use 3.14. So whenever we see that symbol pi, we're going to replace it with 3.14. Always. That's always true. It's a constant value. So in the formula on our formula sheet, you have both of these formulas on the formula sheet. C equals pi d, which again means pi times d. D is the diameter of your circle. And remember, the diameter is the distance all the way across the circle. Or another formula is 2 pi r. So 2 times pi, remember pi is 3.14, times the radius. And the radius is halfway across the circle. Oops, let's use a red highlighter here. The radius is halfway across the circle. So we can use either of these formulas to find our circumference of our circle. So let's try this first example. R equals 6.8 millimeters. That's what we're given in the question. So because we're given the radius in the question, I'm going to choose this formula to use because it has the R in it. So C, which stands for circumference, equals 2 pi r. Whenever you use a formula, you should always copy down that formula before putting numbers into it. So remember what this means. 2 is just the number 2. Beside the pi, and the pi, because the 2 is directly beside the pi, it means we multiply. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in brackets. So pi is always 3.14. And then r, the radius, it's given in the question, is 6.8. So what this means, remember, when there's brackets sitting beside each other, it means multiply. And I like to put the brackets in when I plug stuff into an equation or a formula, because it makes it simpler. It allows you to simplify things a little bit easier, and it makes sure you don't make a mistake. Okay, so I can just do that on my calculator. I can do 2 times 3.14 times 6.8, which gives me 42.704. And in this course, I usually like to say round to 2 decimal places. So we'll do that, 42.70, right? We're not going to round up because there's a 4. And the units is the same as the length of the radius, right? Millimeters. So we just calculated the length around the whole outside of the circle, right? The perimeter of that circle. It's 42.7 millimeters. Okay, now it's your turn. This next circle has a radius of 2 kilometers. Big circle. can you find the perimeter or the circumference of this circle? Pause the video here, try it for yourself, and unpause when you have your answer. So the answer you should have gotten was 12.56 kilometers. Notice how I did to C equals that, and I put a box around it. It's always a good idea to indicate what your final answer is clearly. I should have actually done that in this question too. C equals that, and then put a box around it just to make it clear. Or you can highlight it or underline it, just something to make your final answer stand out. Okay, 4 more questions below. I want you to pause the video here and try these 4 questions yourself. Unpause the video when you think you have all the answers. And you can check at the bottom, right? The answers are at the bottom. So if they don't match up, go back and try to recalculate or see if you can find a mistake, okay? Pause it here, try those yourself, and then we'll quickly discuss the answers. Okay, so hopefully you have answers to these 4 questions. The first 2, A and B, are very similar to the questions we did above. C and D, though, it gives you the diameter in the question, right? D. And it shows that that's all the way across. So hopefully you realized that formula, 2 pi r, isn't going to be as useful here. Maybe try using this one, C equals pi times D, right? So if you use that formula, C equals pi times D, you can plug in the diameter. So pi is 3.14 always, and D is 14 in this case, or 14.0, but that 0 doesn't matter, right? If you do that, you should get the correct answer. This one over here is the same thing. I know that dot in the middle is a little bit confusing, but basically what it means is that this whole length is 16 kilometers. So you can use that to find the circumference. Okay? There you go. That's how to find the perimeter of any shape, whether it's a regular polygon like this or whether it's a circle.